Man, you found the home of your dreams, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the process, you find out that it doesn't appraise. Let's talk about what you do next in the case that you're the buyer and it doesn't appraise, or if you're the seller and it doesn't appraise. Stay tuned. We'll talk about that here in a second on Wednesday with Walter. Hey guys, welcome back to Wednesday with Walter. I'm so excited to see you guys on another Wednesday. We've been talking about this series about the process of buying a home and just kind of hitting some of the major points throughout the process. So if you haven't seen some of those videos, please reach back and take a look at them. I think they'll be very insightful for first-time home buyers, second-time home buyers, or even home buyers and sellers that just haven't bought a home or sold a home in a little while. And, you know, they want to kind of get back into what's next, you know what I mean? So we definitely talk about a lot of key features, and today's key topic is going to be about the appraisal. One last thing is, if you like the things that we're talking about here, don't hesitate to like it. We'd love for you to like the video, then the information we're giving. It gives us some insight on if we're giving you good information that you enjoy. And of course, subscribe and be noted when we shoot out a new video. We got a lot of new videos that we bring out and different conversations and different aspects of the real estate market and business. So let's go ahead and get started about the appraisal, which I got my handy dandy notebook as always. And you know, the first question people always ask me is, why is the appraisal important? Well, I got two answers for you on that. If you're getting financing, it's vital to have an appraisal done, because the bank is only going to lend you the amount of money that it's appraised at. So a great example of that is if you're buying a home, let's say it's $300,000, but it only appraises for $250,000, even though that's a little extreme, but it doesn't appraise for only $250,000. The bank is only willing to give you a loan for $250,000. They're not going to give you $300,000 for a house that's not worth $300,000. And the reason behind that is it's rooted to an effect of, you know, when you think about value on property, you know, let's say, God forbid, you defaulted on the home, they take back that property. When they take back their property, they want to make sure that they can get the amount of money back that they put on that loan to make themselves whole again. Now, of course, there's some different things in regards to that, because sometimes that doesn't happen anyway, but they want to get as close as they can get to what they lent in money in order for you to buy the property. So that's why that's important. If you're a cash buyer, and this usually happens more in some of my luxury clients and some of my higher end properties that we're buying, you know, value is based a little, I don't want to say it's based differently, but I do want to say it's based differently. It's based a little differently because the value of the property and where it stands when you get into these higher priced homes like $1.1 million, 1.3, those are really more in the eye of the beholder in many cases. Now, is there some fact that gives you some value around it? Yes, there's comps and things like that. But the thing that you need to understand when you're dealing with a higher priced home and you're a cash buyer is when you're dealing with that price range, most of the time, or many times, those homes are more unique than a production built home. So as an example, if I was to give you a quick example, if I did a custom home in the middle of spring, you know, and you know, I made a $1.5 million home, and as custom, that home, there is no home that really is comparable to my home specifically, in the way that if I bought a $250,000 production home, let's say built by D.R. Horton, well, I could probably find 5 or 6 houses in that neighborhood that are the same floor plan, similar product, similar items. You kind of get what I'm saying there when you're trying to assess value. Now, again, you do have to understand that I'm a real estate agent, and I'm not an appraiser. They're truly the only ones that can really assess value and give you a value on a property and certify it. Whereas as a real estate agent, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a comparable market analysis, and we're going to show you based on what we see in the market that's been selling over the last 6 months, and that changes quite often, okay? But what we've seen in the last 6 months, where you are geography-wise, what homes are similar and like in style and floor plan and size, and based off of that, that's telling us this is how much this home the range that this home should sell in. Hope that kind of made sense to you guys. That's how we kind of assess value, whether you're a buyer or a seller. It's finding out what near you that's close to what you have is selling for. The true factor of assessing the value on your home is truly the buyer determines what your home is worth. And what I mean by that is your home is only worth as much as someone's willing to pay for it. You know, so if you have a home and let's say hypothetically you think your home is $400,000. Well, if there's no buyers in the market over a 6 month to a year span that's willing to pay $400,000 for your home, then based on that, your home isn't valued at $400,000. And that doesn't really matter what product in there, because it's just supply and demand, and it's what is someone willing to pay. It's just like if I went to a market and I wanted to buy a bag of oranges, what am I willing to pay for that bag of oranges? You kind of get what I'm saying there? So all of these things are important when you start to think about the numbers of an appraisal. But let's really kind of dig into the appraisal and how value is assessed. I kind of hit on it a little bit a minute or two ago, but the number one thing we do is we're going to find 3 or 4 like homes. We call them comps, comparables, okay? So if your house, let's think of a neighborhood, let's say your house is in Windrose, okay? Your home's in the Windrose, and you're right off the golf course, okay? So what's going to be important when we're finding comparable homes is finding other homes that are like yours in size and materials. And when I say materials, we don't want to compare a 4-bedroom to a 3-bedroom or a 5-bedroom to a 3-bedroom if we don't have to. There are ways we can adjust it to make it work, but we really want to compare a 4-bedroom to a 4-bedroom, a 3-bedroom to a 3-bedroom. And then you want to also look at, well, this one has hardwood floors in it versus this one has carpet. This one has Formica countertops where this one has granite. So this one's completely updated where this one is a sign from the 80s. You know, we got to keep some of those things in mind as we look at it. This one has a pool, this one does not. This one's on a big lot, let's say a corner or a cul-de-sac lot, and it's a huge backyard, and this one has the smallest yard in the neighborhood. All of these things are factors that play a role in assessing the value of your property, or at least giving you a good enough range. Now, as an agent, my number one thing for my clients is customer service and making sure we get the most money we can for your property. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to assess the value, we're going to assess what's going on in the market. Because determining whether the market is a buyer or a seller's market can also help in that valuation. And many of you might not know what a difference between a buyer and a seller's market, so let me explain that really quick as well. In a buyer's market, you're going to have more inventory or more homes for sale than you have buyers. Why do they call that a buyer's market? Because the buyer can come to your house and they can find 4 or 5 other comparative houses like yours to purchase. That's important to know when you're putting your house on the market, because if we're in a buyer's market, we got to strategically price your home within the parameters of assessed value that'll give you the most money, but at the same time make you highly competitive with the other 4 properties that compare to yours, okay? Now in the seller's market, which right now we're in a strong seller's market. You know, pre-COVID, we were really good. During this COVID period, which we're still in, we were doing well. The market is, we can't keep houses I mean, there's no inventory. So right now we're in a strong seller's market. And what does that mean? That means basically inventory levels are low. So I always like to say it like this. It's like having 3 houses and you have 15 people that want to buy those 3 houses, that are competing with each other to buy those 3 houses. That's in many cases can drive the prices up. That in many cases can make your home sell quickly and for the most money. And in many cases, we have to really pay attention to the assessed value of the appraiser and stay within those parameters, because problems can happen if it's priced too high and it appraises lower than the price that you sold it at. And we'll talk about that briefly here in a second. So when we talk about, again, we talk about assessed value and we talk about getting that range. We're usually going to give you a range as an agent. Your house can fall based on these comps. Your house is going to fall somewhere between this and this. Now, at the end of the day, as a homeowner, you're going to decide what to sell your home for. As your professional, our job is, and you know, my job with my clients is to make sure that you're getting the most money for your home, we're selling it in the quickest amount of time, and most importantly, we're making this transaction for you as smooth and seamless as possible. You can only do that in many cases by getting all of these other things in place and lining them up, crossing your T's and dotting your I's, okay? So somewhere in the process, we'll get somebody that wants to buy the house, they put a contract on it, they do their option period. We talked about that last week in the inspection. Let's say the inspection came back clean. And let's say, for the example of this particular video, let's say the home sold for $300,000, okay? The appraiser, which is ordered by the lender, comes out, appraises the property, does their measurements, okay? And they assess that the home is valued at $285,000. That's $15,000 less than what you sold it for. So now we all got to make a decision. As a buyer's agent, when I'm working with my buyers, I'm gonna tell you, most of the time, my first inkling is I'm gonna ask them 2 questions. I'm gonna say, do you love the house enough that you want to pay the difference between $285,000 and $300,000? And they might have it, they might not even have it, okay? They're actually paying more for the house, okay? And there are some circumstances when that happens and it makes sense, okay? Or I'm gonna ask them, we need to go back and renegotiate with the seller because the home is only valued at $285,000. We need to assess what we can do to get this at $285,000. Which then pops the question to the seller of, well, do I want to drop my house price to $285,000? And this is where it gets complicated, a little complicated, right? Because if it's an FHA loan, that appraisal will follow that house for 6 months. So as a seller, you won't be able to sell that house to another FHA buyer for more than $285,000 because that appraisal will follow that home, okay? And there's some rules behind that and reasons behind that. We're not going to get into that in this video, maybe on another one. But if it's a conventional loan, that is not necessarily true. They might have another appraiser come out, and if you can prove why your home is $300,000 versus $285,000, and they come out with an appraisal, and that appraiser appraises at $300,000, you can sell that to a conventional homeowner. Now, let me tell you why it's important to know that that's not as common as most people might think it is. And the reason why is because when you think about buyers, first-time home buyers, buyers that are getting grants, different options and functions or resources that are available to them, these buyers don't have that liquid money, okay, in most cases. And as a seller, if I'm selling a home in a neighborhood that really kind of leans more towards first-time home buyers and those second-time home buyers that don't have a lot of that liquid money available to them in most cases, more times than not, your odds of getting another FHA buyer is very high. If you got 3 contracts and the 3 contracts were FHA buyers, your odds that you're going to get another FHA buyer is very true. So you got to decide whether or not, okay, am I going to move down to the 285? Maybe we can adjust some of these concessions that I've given if you gave some to the buyer. You know, really, it's every scenario is a case-by-case scenario, but it really opens up the door that you got to start asking questions, and it really depends on how much the buyer really wants to buy that house and how much the seller really wants to sell that house. And I'll give you an example. I had a client, we took a listing, and we, based on the comparables, we priced it within that range. And I'm going to say that the comparables show that this house should be $230,000. Okay. We ended up getting, within 2 days, 2-3 days, we ended up getting an offer at full list price, $230,000. Before I could deliver that to the seller, my client, we received another offer and another offer. So by the end of the day, we had 5 offers. We were at a multiple offer situation. So of course, as an agent, I reached out to all the agents and said, we're about to go into multiple offer situation. My client wants to just pick one. So if this is your best offer, then let me know. If you want to put in a different offer, we need to do that in the next 24 hours, okay? Now, within that 24 hours, I received 6 more offers. And as they were coming in, I was telling them the same thing. This is the interesting thing about it, is the home was spectacular. It really didn't compare on the same level with many of the homes within the property or within the neighborhood, because this particular owner was very meticulous and they added a lot of things to the property. Now, I say all that to say this, is when everything settled, the first offer that came in immediately called me back and said, nope, we're writing another offer. And they literally ended up buying the home, and they bought it at $15,000 over asking price, okay? Now, you gotta remember, when I talked about you pick the price, I'm just gonna give you the range, I'm gonna give you the professional opinion and the range of what's going on in the market based on your neighborhood, okay? Is I was concerned the moment that they put that offer in, whether or not the home would appraise. I knew it might be close, just based on some of the amenities that were in the property, some add-ons and things like that, and size of the lot, but it had some concerns for me, okay? The appraisal came in. Sure enough, it came in at appraisal value. Didn't have an issue at all. That was a win-win for both sides, okay? Same scenario, had a buyer, I was on the buy side, and a client came in and we offered full list price. Homes were selling, multiple offers, we won, we offered full list price, offered and won. Appraiser came out, appraiser appraised it at $7,500 under what full list price was. And that's kind of one of those things where you see where the comps range obviously were right, because I pulled the same comps that the listing agent probably pulled, or pretty close. But the appraiser is the person that assesses the value on the property. And once it came down to 75, we looked over the report, we checked the measurements. What we found out that many people don't realize is sometimes with production builders, they include the garage square footage inside the property's overall square footage. So because the property had lost 350 square feet per se, that's why the property price range changed, okay? So these are some of the little hiccups that you see that happen in a real estate transaction. And what's most important to note, whether you're on the buy side or you're on the seller side, is that you got to be open to understand where you are, okay? And I say this, is that, you know, when you start to think about, you know, I'm sure as a seller, that's heartbreaking. You were expecting X amount of dollars in equity, and you just lost that right off the top. But if you really want to sell your home, and the buyer really wants to buy your home, there's a middle ground where we could still make it a win-win scenario, no matter what the appraisal comes in at. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox on that. But I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. The also thing I wanted to also hit is what's the cost of an appraisal? On average, now every appraisal company, and again, it depends on size, measurements, things of that nature, but on average, appraisal is generally about 350 bucks. That's also out of pocket, okay? I've seen appraisals go as high as 500, 600 bucks on average, but again, that is an out-of-pocket expense. That does not go with your closing costs if you're a buyer. So you want to make sure you're aware of that. Remember last week I talked about the inspection. That was 350 bucks or a little bit higher. So let's say that's 350 bucks. The appraisal's 350 bucks. That's already $700 that you've paid out of your pocket in getting some of these items done that you can't use as closing costs. And then, as I said earlier, the lender is the person who orders it. And most importantly is, and I want to kind of leave you guys with this, is that when you think about the appraisal, you got to be able to, as a buyer, you know, well, let me back up. I'm going to talk about both sides. As a buyer, if the appraisal comes in under, I have to come to the conclusion with my real estate professional that I'm going to try and negotiate this, but the seller might not go down to the lower amount. He might say, no, I'm going to keep the house. And you got to be willing and ready in many cases to say, all right, because you are protected as long as you fill the right paperwork out, okay? And a real estate professional knows which documents I'm talking about. Whereas your earnest money is protected, where you can say, okay, I want to back out of this contract. And you go find another house that fits your needs. And you got to be okay with that, okay? As a seller, you also got to think almost in the reverse. And you got to say, yes, I'm selling this house at $300,000, but what is my bottom line that I would go to in the case that it doesn't appraise for $300,000? Because as a seller, I know in many cases, and many of my clients that I've dealt with over the years, we put so much into our house that we assess this value. Oh, I paid $25,000 for this, remodeling the kitchen, and I put a $50,000 pool in, and I put this and da-da-da-da-da, and you're naming all these different things that you did in the house to bring value to it. I want to say that you're never, at least I've never seen it happen, you're never going to get dollar for dollar. Where you put in $70,000, where you got that right on the top of your assessed value. Usually you'll get some percentage of that, okay? But at the end of the day, it ultimately comes down to how the appraisers assess your value on that property. And they're going to base that off of the market and comparable properties in your area. Within that, usually they're trying to stay within the neighborhood. But if they need to, they can go out half a mile to a mile. But you know, once you leave the neighborhood, you're starting to deal with comps that aren't necessarily the same. So you got to understand that that's what's happening in that. That's why I give such a detailed market analysis when I talk to my clients, because I want you to understand exactly where we are, where we potentially could be, and what is the hiccup in this scenario, because then it makes it a smoother transaction for you as a seller or as a buyer. So hopefully you've learned about one more step about the appraisal process in buying a home or selling a home. If you have any questions or you need a market analysis on your property, you're trying to determine what your value is, and you know what? You might not be ready to sell right now. That's okay. If you want to talk to us and kind of find out, well, what is my house valued at right now? Or what's the range it's valued at right now? Because I tell you, this is a market where this is one of the best times to ever sell your home and move up into the next home. And I'll leave you with this, because the reason why it is because this market is scorching hot. Interest rates are at all-time lows, and inventory levels are at all-time lows. So as a seller, really I'm cornering the market because there's not enough homes to sell for the people that's out there that want to buy. And with the interest rates being as low as they are, that's encouraging buyers to buy. So you're in a win-win scenario right now. And like I said, if you have any questions about assessing the value on your property, or just even have any questions about like where would you go next, what's the buying process now, you can always reach us. You can reach me at 832-257-9083. I hope this has given you some information. Stay blessed, stay safe, and I'm going to see you next week on Wednesday with Walter. See you next week on Wednesday with Walter. You have a nice one now. Bye-bye.